Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be the Mid-Year Freakout Tag. The Mid-Year Freakout Tag is an annual tradition. I've seen a lot of people say the creators are no longer on Booktube. That is only 50% true. This tag was created by Ellie from Earl Grey Books, who is still a booktuber. She's still active on Booktube. Chami, who co-created it, switched to lifestyle vlogging, so her Booktube channel is gone. But one of the creators is still here. I wasn't tagged in this. It's a tradition. You don't have to be tagged. Question number 1 is the best book you've read so far this year, and I'm going to say the best book I've read so far this year is Tadeusz Borowski's This Way for the Gas, Ladies and Gentlemen. This is a series of short stories that are basically autofiction, and in them we follow a character who during the Second World War has been arrested as a political prisoner, is being used as slave labor at Auschwitz, and as a non-Jewish person is not slated for the gas chamber, but you could still be executed or worked to death or starved to death, etc. And it is kind of a horrific portrait of people in a situation that is so hideous that it's surreal, and kind of hanging over it is the fact that because it is autofiction and the character is living through things that we know the author lived through, we also have hanging over it that the author did kill himself after the war, so there's kind of an extra pathos going on there. My runner-up would be Paco Roca's Twists of Fate, which is a lightly fictionalized version of research that he did looking into Spanish Civil War refugees who fought with the French during the Second World War, kind of assuming that if you fought one brand of fascism, they would turn around and go home, and that never happened. And Roca is a character in his own book, but with the fiction of the story is that he's interviewing someone who's still alive, whereas in reality, the character is an amalgam who is based on people who had already passed away, and he had discovered them through public records and journals and things like that. And I think that was really powerful as well. I'm not normally such a big Second World War reader, but those were definitely my top things this year. Number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and I'm gonna play with that a little because I finally read Linda Newberry's Some Other War, which is the first book in a trilogy from which I read books 2 and 3 about 25 years ago. So I finally got caught up with that. I do have a habit of reading books in reverse order, but usually not with that much of a time gap between them. That is a historical fiction series about a twin brother and sister who, in the UK, right at the start of, who are 17, 18 at the start of the First World War, and in a kind of cliched way, the girl goes off and becomes a nurse, and the boy goes off and joins the military, and it's about their various friends, and everyone dies, and everyone's shell-shocked. Question number 3 is new release that you haven't read yet but want to. I currently have 2 arcs that I got through NetGalley from Archipelago Press, which is a really interesting publisher that does a lot of work in translation. And I do not remember what the books are called or what language they were translated from. I will hopefully take a screenshot and pop it over here, because yeah, I need to get to those. Question number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and probably there's going to be another volume of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' crime series Reckless, which I believe is coming out in October, so I'm looking forward to that. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment, and I can't talk about my biggest disappointment yet because it's a Booktube prize book, so that will be coming when I do my video about that. Question number 6 is your biggest surprise, and that's actually a Booktube prize book from the Octofinals, so I can talk about that. And that was Sonia Falero's The Good Girls, which I had not been interested in prior to that. I just thought it was going to be a generic true crime, but I thought it was incredibly successful. It's looking at the case of the 2 girls who were found hanged in northern India, and somebody posted it on Twitter, and so it became this international event. But because they were from a poor family and from the middle of nowhere, the case had been really bungled early on, and it's just a fascinating portrait of that. Now, I'm apparently alone in thinking that, because the book didn't move on from the Octofinals, and I saw a lot of people didn't like it. I saw one person say there were too many endnotes, and I mean, for me, a book can never have too many endnotes. I've read a mystery that had endnotes, and I've read poetry that had footnotes, and I thought that made both of those things superior. So you can never have too many of those, as far as I'm concerned. But not everybody liked that. But yeah, question number 7 is your favorite new author. And I don't really have favorite authors, but I will say that my favorite publisher that I've read a bunch of things from is Charco Press, which is a UK publisher that's doing translations of work from Latin America. And I've read a pile of books that they've put out that have been really interesting. Even the ones that I haven't liked have been fascinating. So, new favorite publisher, maybe. Question number 9 is your newest favorite character. And I don't care about characters, so pass. Oh, and I skipped number 8, which is newest fictional crush. And again, I don't really care about characters, but I will say I'm reading an arc now that I don't quite honestly like particularly, but it has a really beautiful cover with really beautiful costumes. Costumes look top notch. So maybe I'll insert a picture of that there. I have a crush on the costumes. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry, and that was definitely Emily Rapp Black's Frida Kahlo and My Left Leg. That is an essay collection in which the author talks about, in part, looking at 2 different exhibitions of Frida Kahlo's work that included things like her painted prosthetic and back brace and whatnot, and the author is talking about the different framework through which you view that kind of thing, and how she, is also being an amputee, is looking at it from a different framework than she thinks most of the either able-bodied or people with different disabilities are viewing that kind of thing. But she's also kind of comparing Kahlo's work on pain with her own experience of pain, not physically, but after the death of her son, because she had a child who was born dying, essentially. She had a son who had Tay-Sachs, and she's not from one of the 3 ethnic groups that you normally expect to have to worry about that. So it was a surprise, in addition to being this horrible tragedy. And so anyway, he died at the age of 3, and she's going through that pain compared to physical pain, and it's just a really interesting book, but gutting. I mean, when she's talking about that kind of grief, it's just incredibly gut-wrenching. Yeah. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and what is that? I don't read books that make me happy. No, that's a lie. I read a delightfully wholesome children's book, Zaid Salim, Chasing the Dream by Hannah Khan. This is adorable. If you like kids' books and you like basketball, this is super cute. Goodness, that's good. I never have anything for the happy, because I read the most depressing stuff ever. So good work, me. I probably hit the microphone there. That won't sound good. Question number 12 is the favorite book to movie adaptation that you saw this year. I have not seen any book to movie adaptations this year, but I did just get the DVD out of the library of the film adaptation of Before Night Falls by Ronaldo Arenas, which I read a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago. I don't remember. But anyway, there had been holds on that, which is surprising because it's an older movie. But yes, so I will be watching that soon. So if that's the only one so I mean, soon that will be my, by default, favorite, because it'll be the only one. Question number 13 is your favorite video that you've done this year. I don't know, I don't think I've done anything interesting. I've been very lax with videos this year. I don't think I've done anything interesting, and I've barely done anything other than wrap-ups, to be honest. So actually, that's kind of a lie. I have filmed some stuff for a Springathon vlog I was going to do, and I haven't edited it yet. So my favorite does not exist yet. One of these days it'll exist. Question number 14 is the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year or received. I bought the Folio Society editions of Ford Madox Ford's Parade's End. So, like, look at how pretty these books are. And they have these in there. They have the art. Yeah. I got this during, I forget if it's a Boxing Day sale or a New Year's sale, but this was originally 200 Canadian dollars and I got it for $50. So, score. Because, yeah, so those. Question number 15 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And my answer is, well, those 2 books from Archipelago Press that I have the arcs of. Also, the book that I said had the pretty cover that I'm also reading the arc of. So hopefully I will finish those 3 books by the end of the year so I can review them and improve my NetGalley percentage. Yeah. All right, so that's the end of that. If you haven't done this tag, go and do it. Everyone has to do this. It's a tradition. And yeah, if you've read any of the books that I talked about, I'd love to hear your opinions. And And do you fall in love with costumes? Let me know about that too. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.